This is the story of the single most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me. Now, for reference, I'm a 39-year-old woman, and I was 35 at the time this happened. To call me petite would be putting it kindly, and as much as I've been working on my weight training over the years, my gains aren't anything to write home about. I was 35 in 2014, and I was living down in Florida at the time to help take care of my grandparents. Not far from where they live was this big old park, maybe 3 miles around, and while I lived down there, I used the park as the route for my Sunday jogs. A lot of other folks use the park too, especially on the weekends, so to beat the crowds, I would run early, like very early, like 6:30 in the morning early. I'm not trying to show off. My job has a very early start time too, so that's just my default sleeping pattern anyway. But if I run pretty much any other time of the day, I just don't get the space that I might have otherwise. The only trouble is, being all alone as a female jogger comes with its very own set of problems, as I'm sure you know. You can avoid most of these by running early morning and never late at night, but as I came to learn, sometimes trouble doesn't sleep. I was about a mile into the run, feeling slightly more tired than usual, which really sucked, but oh well. The track I was running on was right next to the road, with the only thing separating the dirt track from the road being a line of sidewalk. There were very few cars on the road, given how early on a Sunday it was, so when this beat-up-looking pickup truck drove past me and honked, it really took the wind out of my sails. I really hate getting catcalled or honked at when I'm running, even if it's just guys trying to be nice, I guess. I hate to sound like an F&B here, but it is what it is. I'm in my zone, focusing on my breathing and not tripping over anything. Just don't take me out of my focus. As I said, the guy honked, kept on driving, and I cursed him out in my head as I went. It had been a long time since anything like that had happened, so it just kind of hit a little harder. But I kept running, trying to use the anger to push myself a little harder, and just carried on with my morning workout. Then, maybe 5 to 10 minutes later, the same truck drives past me again. I heard him before I saw him that time, honking really loud as he drove past me as close to the curb as he could manage. I just broke. I had no idea what the guy's problem was, if he was still loaded from the night before or whatever, but I slowed down, threw up 2 middle fingers, and just started cussing the guy out. But I swear the second the first curse left my lips, he slams on his brakes, pulls over, and jumps out to confront me. I couldn't believe it. Like I just couldn't believe anyone could be so petty. I pulled out the one headphone I actually use, in time to hear him ask, "You got something you want to say to me?" I briefly debated on saying yes, before giving him a huge chunk of my mind, but just from the way the guy was acting, I knew this wasn't going to be civil. The guy had spotted a lone female jogger, repeatedly antagonized me, then jumped out of his car, apparently ready to fight a woman, the moment I gave him any pushback. He obviously wasn't playing with a full deck, and then the moment I took a step back, he started to run at me. Breaking into a full sprint to get away from the guy amounted to the most terrifying few moments of my life. I was convinced that he was going to catch me, completely convinced that at any second I was going to go tumbling to the ground after he tackled me or kicked my legs out from under me. The thought must have been like rocket fuel to my legs because somehow the guy didn't catch me. And you can bet your butt that he was chasing me, though. I could hear him barking all kinds of abuse behind me as I went. There came a point where he sounded audibly out of breath, and that spurred me to run even faster, knowing that I was going to be able to get away. I don't know if it's some kind of irony or whatever, but it always strikes me that although running so early on my own almost got me into trouble, it was all the running I'd done before that which allowed me to get away from the guy. You think there might have been a moment of celebration or something, because there was definitely a point where I knew that he wasn't following me anymore. But instead of stopping and calling the cops or something, I just kept running and running until I was completely and utterly spent. When I stopped, my legs felt like jelly, and I basically just collapsed onto a patch of grass, panting heavily and totally in shock. I felt like puking, but I held it down, and then out of nowhere, I saw another jogger running up to the track towards me. I'd run into the park, if that makes sense, so I was no longer exposed to the road the guy was driving on, but I still didn't feel safe. I still thought the guy's truck was just going to appear out of nowhere, even though that was probably impossible. I think I was still in shock when I told my fellow jogger what had happened, and she immediately began to call 911. Then, in between talking to the operator, she said to me, "You're safe now, sweetie." And I just started welling up. Then, before I knew it, I was crying in the woman's arms as she talked to 911. I've never been chased like that, not by anyone who I really thought was trying to hurt me anyway. I didn't know I could even get that scared, that out of your mind, kind of terrified that you can only remember in still frames afterwards, like your brain is trying to block it out. I tried to pull myself together as quickly as I could, and for the longest time I lied to myself and others about how much I let it affect me. I stopped running as frequently, confined my cardio to treadmills and ellipticals, and it had a terrible effect on my overall fitness. I didn't change my calorie intake either, in fact, and I think I ate more due to the stress and trauma, like my body's way of stopping it from happening again by making me too unfit to run. Facing the fact that I was hurting became a hurdle all unto itself. I didn't want to admit to myself that some random psycho had instilled this terror inside of me, but he had, and as one doctor phrased it, I was, quote, having a perfectly normal reaction to a very abnormal situation. I made some quite large strides in my time before I moved back to Hartford, and I didn't run any kind of long-distance outdoor routes until I got home again. The cops basically made it clear that without any kind of ID on the guy, there was nothing they could do about it, and even if they could, they would only be able to book him for threatening behavior or something along those lines. If I'd have chosen to go running around that same park again, there's a chance the exact same thing would have happened again. I guess I'm trailing off the point here and straying into topics that are way too complex for just one person to figure them out. I just hope that one day, lone women can enjoy outdoor exercise without having to think about their safety like that. But I also have a feeling that day won't ever come. Not in my lifetime, anyway. If you enjoyed this scary story, listen to thousands more, either over on the Let's Read YouTube channel or podcast.